Disney CEO Bob Iger is once again caught in a storm of controversy. This time, thanks to his lead actress in Snow White, Rachel Zegler. Just weeks after her controversial remarks sparked outrage among nearly 80 million Americans, Disney dropped the second trailer for Snow White, and audiences are making it clear they want this film to fail. The backlash is brutal. The trailer has only managed to scrape together 27,000 likes while drowning under a staggering 800,000 dislikes as of December 10th. And at this pace, it won't be long before that dislike count smashes past the million mark.
I'm not a mentat, but the quick math on this, it's a 14-to-1 ratio. 14 downvotes to 1 upvote.
The interaction on the downside.
You might be wondering, why is this Snow White remake facing such massive backlash? After all, Disney's live-action remakes have never been cinematic masterpieces. Dumbo flopped, and The Lion King barely scraped by with lukewarm reception. So, what makes Snow White the ultimate public enemy? The answer lies in a perfect storm of frustration, nostalgia, and Disney's relentless push to modernize classics, whether anyone asked for it or not. Sure, the trailer looks rough, just another uninspired remake. But what really ignited this firestorm isn't just the dull visuals, it's the sheer audacity of the creative changes and Disney's ongoing mission to reshape beloved classics into something progressive, often at the expense of what made them special in the first place. Let's be real, who actually wanted a Snow White remake? No one was begging for a reimagining of this 1937 classic. Yes, the original was groundbreaking as the first ever full-length animated film, but it's not exactly topping fan wish lists for a reboot. Disney's recent strategy seems less about delivering what audiences want and more about squeezing every last drop from its legacy franchises. And the thing is, Snow White didn't need a remake. The original still holds up today with its stunning artistry and historical significance. Yet, here we are, stuck with a film no one asked for, packed with changes no one wanted, all to fix. Problems no one saw in the first place. The controversy isn't just about a bad trailer or uninspired CGI, it's about how Snow White has been handled behind the scenes. This remake didn't just stumble into public disapproval, it sprinted straight into it. And the backlash? It's tapping into something much bigger. A cultural battle raging in Hollywood, one that goes far beyond just another disappointing Disney remake.
What does this tell us? What does this tell us, Chris? It tells us the cultural significance of pissing everybody off, and not just our sphere, everybody. And this is why we talk about Snow White, the movie itself.
Snow White finds itself caught between two clashing eras. On one hand, we're living in the age of intellectual properties, IPs, where studios are too afraid to take creative risks, choosing instead to recycle old ideas and rely on nostalgia to sell tickets. On the other hand, we're coming out of a period where studios, Disney included, pushed hard, maybe too hard, to inject progressivism, or what some call wokeism, into their stories. These conflicting priorities have now collided head-on, and Snow White is caught in the wreckage. Let's talk about the changes that have fans up in arms. First up, the dwarfs, or rather, the lack of them. Instead of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Disney initially pitched Snow White and the Seven Magical Persons. Why? Because actor Peter Dinklage criticized the original story for being offensive to little people. Fair point. But Disney's response? Replacing the dwarfs with vague, magical beings. A move so absurd that it was instantly mocked by just about everyone. Let's be honest, it was absolutely ridiculous.
Groups rather than audiences to make every female character strong. That was pushed so much and done so badly that people are tired of it. Whenever you give somebody too much of one thing, they eventually ask for the other.
And there's the casting of Rachel Zegler as Snow White, a decision that sparked just as much controversy. Disney seems to have overlooked a crucial detail. Snow White isn't just a name. It's a description. In the original story, her skin is literally described as white as snow. Casting someone who doesn't match this defining trait feels like a fundamental misunderstanding of the character. Now, race bending can work in some cases. Take Halle Bailey's Little Mermaid, for example. She delivered a fantastic performance, and since Ariel's story isn't tied to any specific ethnicity, it worked. But Snow White, the defining characteristic is right there in the name. Here's the real issue. Many of these changes come across as condescending. Disney seems obsessed with fixing its classics to align with modern sensibilities, But in doing so, it completely misinterprets what made these stories beloved in the first place. Whether it's altering lyrics in The Little Mermaid or removing iconic scenes in other remakes, these so-called updates don't feel like enhancements. They feel like forced messaging. Instead of celebrating these classics, Disney comes off as preachy, as if it's telling audiences, "We know better than you do." No one is claiming the original Snow White is perfect by today's standards. It was a product of its time. But that's exactly why fans love it, for its timeless charm. Reworking it to fit modern ideals doesn't just strip away its magic, it alienates the very audience Disney is hoping to win over. The Snow White debacle is a wake-up call. For years, Disney has relied on its classics for easy money, but with every misstep, it's becoming clear that this strategy has limits. You can only push your core audience away so many times before they stop showing up altogether. Intro, and then there's the prince, or rather, the complete absence of one. Early reports suggested that Snow White wouldn't be pining for a prince, nor would he play any role in saving her. And sure, no one in 2024 is demanding a damsel in distress storyline. But here's the kicker: Snow White was never about a helpless girl waiting for a man to rescue her in the first place. The prince wasn't the focus of her journey. He was a symbol of hope. His presence wasn't about romance alone. It was about the idea that kindness and perseverance would lead to something better. Disney's decision to erase him entirely doesn't modernize the story. It misunderstands it. Instead of making Snow White stronger, this change strips away a key element that made her story resonate with audiences for generations.
The fans, disrespecting Snow White, which helped build Disney, disrespecting half the country doesn't help your film. All press is good press is bullshit.
Instead of celebrating the legacy of the original Snow White, Rachel Zegler's comments came off as dismissive, maybe even elitist. And that's the real issue. People don't want to feel like they're being talked down to, especially when it comes to something as beloved as Snow White. Her remarks about the character not needing to be saved by the prince only added fuel to the fire. To many, it felt like she was forcing modern sensibilities onto a story that was never really about romance in the first place. But it wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Snarky, condescending, and completely out of touch with the audience Disney is supposedly trying to win over. Let's be real, this Snow White controversy isn't happening in a vacuum. It's the result of years of frustration with Disney's approach to remakes. Audiences are tired of seeing their favorite stories picked apart and reshaped to fit an arbitrary modern mold. And the idea that these updates are somehow superior to the originals, that's not just tone deaf, it's insulting. Take the decision to eliminate the dwarfs. Disney claimed it was to avoid offending anyone, but in doing so, they arguably created a new issue, erasing roles that could have gone to talented actors from the little people community. Even fans who initially agreed with Peter Dinklage's critique felt that replacing the dwarfs with magical persons was such an overcorrection that it bordered on ridiculous. It's a pattern we've seen time and time again. Disney keeps changing things no one asked to be changed, while refusing to innovate where it actually matters. Fans aren't frustrated because they're resistant to progress. They're frustrated because these changes feel performative, unnecessary, and completely out of touch with what audiences actually want.
Disney fans actually wanted the love story. There is a demand for that, but there's not a demand for this. And Snow White just kind of represents how out of touch Hollywood is and how they're not actually giving people what they want.
So what does all of this mean for Disney? Well, one thing is clear. The company's approach to remakes needs a serious overhaul. Instead of trying to fix classics or chase modern trends, Disney should refocus on what made these stories timeless in the first place. Audiences aren't asking for perfection, they're asking for authenticity. They want to see these characters and stories respected, not reimagined beyond recognition to fit some arbitrary modern mold.